What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Step by Step, the Micro Budget Filmmaker. I'm Nick Bowman.
I'm Naim.
And I'm back.
Yes, Billy is back for this. Well, at least for this.
At least for this episode.
At least for this episode.
I'll try to come back as much as I can.
Well, we're good. Well, we're happy to have you back because we're gonna kind of talk a little bit about you're getting ready to shoot your next feature in a couple months or so, right?
June,
it's just coming up. Yeah.
So today we're recording this is April 17th.
17th.
And we start shooting Guilt June 11th. So we have a little bit of a budget. It's a supernatural thriller that I wrote. Quick synopsis: it's about a girl named Elizabeth who comes back from college and starts having these very vivid, violent dreams of seeing a version of herself, a darker version of herself, killing her friends, killing people she knows. And part of that plays into this is that she was diagnosed with early onset schizophrenia after an accident where her younger sister died when she was a kid. They were 12 and 10. But after going away to college, she doesn't believe she has schizophrenia. So once she comes back from school and is staying with her parents again, she feels like the stress of being home again sort of triggers these dreams, and she feels like there's something else happening. Maybe she's haunted by something rather than it being schizophrenia, but that's sort of the mystery that plays out in the movie. And then she eventually meets a guy named Matt Graydman, who is a former priest turned private investigator who believes that she's being haunted by something. So once he comes into it, the story shifts, and you don't know if she's actually the one doing this and it's the schizophrenia, or is it whatever is haunting her. And that's sort of the mystery that plays out in the second half of the movie. So that's what we're shooting starting in June, but we're going to talk a little bit more about prep. But we also have a movie that we're prepping, which is a horror film that Naim is directing that I co-wrote with him. Well, we'll talk about that. Sort of co-wrote. My name's on it. I'm just going to put it.
Your name is on it.
Yeah.
So, I mean...
Let's just say I wrote a crappy script that Naim made.
It's like a no-show producer job. It's just
I wrote this old crappy script that you fixed.
I don't know about crappy. There was a foundation there. There was a story there. It just needed to be extracted.
It needed some polish. It needed some... Yeah.
Need some oomph.
I'd exhausted my creativity on it. So.
It needed you. Yeah.
But we're going to shoot that one in September, October of this year. So we're getting ready to start casting. We have a couple actors that you've talked to, but the majority of it, you're doing a pretty good sized audition. But it's not a huge cast. What do we got? Like 12 characters. So it's not terribly big.
12.
So that's where we're at, Nick. What do you think?
So and we're all involved. We're all working on these. We're all working on these flicks. And I guess rather than kind of talk about we'll have you on later down the road to kind of like talk more about how you came to like write Guilt and all that. Rather than we're not going to go too heavy into. I mean, obviously, I think you gave a pretty good synopsis of Guilt, I think.
Yeah, that's the general gist of the story. Yeah. Tell people what the Devout's about.
Yes, talk about the Devout.
I don't even know what it's about.
that there's a problem.
It's about a cult. All right, it's about a cult, basically. It's about this guy who gets tangled up into this cult, and
a little bit of a love triangle.
There's a little bit of love triangle. There's a little bit of sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Yes, it's very much. I've described it as a vampire movie without the vampires.
It's hard for me to describe this movie because I don't know how to describe it.
Interesting enough,
we're getting into the cult craze now. Filmmaking.
I've been weirdly obsessed with. I've never been in a cult. I'm just going to throw that out there. But I've always enjoyed like watching documentaries.
That's what they're telling you right as we're recording this.
Yeah. I am not in QAnon. Let me just clarify that. But yeah, that was the original. It was based on some stuff that I had written years ago, and that's how it sort of came about. And I sort of switched it to a cult, and then. Devout, synopsis, Naim.
Yes, Devout is about a guy named Clint who's basically at a point in his life. He's in his like mid-20s, and he's kind of going through the motions of life. He's kind of on autopilot. He's on and off with his girlfriend, ex-girlfriend type, and he lives with his roommate, his best friend, who's getting married, and he's just stuck. he ends up going to a party where he meets this chick who's like part of this cult.
They don't know it's a cult.
His friend actually sets him up with Faith, the character.
Faith, right?
They set up through the friend, and then they meet, and then she goes, "We can help you, with your problems, this and this," and
try to rope him in.
Yeah, they try to. He doesn't fall for it. He's kind of leaning towards it because he doesn't know anything else, like how to do anything really. So he just falls for it, and he gets caught up with the whole Kane situation and the leader, and
Kane's the leader of the
friends get
cult, right?
Kidnapped and shit, and
bad shit happens.
It turns into this whole blood.
And then it sort of brings his ex-girlfriend back into it.
Yeah.
So that's where the love triangle aspect comes into it.
Yes.
Yeah. It's a fun, action-driven horror movie. Almost is how I would.
It's a
It's a horror.
Vibe
film,
I got reading it. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's very much action-driven.
Yeah.
Not slasher, not supernatural, more action-driven.
Yeah. I'd say that. That's probably why.
So I've tried to compare like other action horror films that I can think of, and like you can't go to the level of like Underworld.
No.
No. I wouldn't.
It's not that. It's not that grand in action.
Yeah.
It's more Lost Boys sort of feel. Something like that's why I said it's like a vampire flick, but instead of the vampires, they're a cult.
Okay.
That's the way I try to describe it. But yeah, you don't really have any influences on the movie.
No.
Which is really interesting.
Yeah, this is really, For
Guilt, my influences for Guilt were Nightmare on Elm Street because of the dream sequences. Yeah. Exorcism of Emily Rose because of some of the possession type stuff that happens in the movie. And then the third one was the Conjuring movies because in the movie Matt and Elizabeth sort of become this sort of paranormal team throughout the movie. It builds as they work together. And it's sort of like the origins, the way that the Warrens work together in the Conjuring movies. It's sort of influenced. So those are my influences on this. I always tend to have 2 or 3 movies that influence each movie. But yeah, The Devout's different. Mm-hmm. It's harder to... I didn't have a specific influence. I wanted to write something that had a cult in it. Mm-hmm. I think I got the cult stuff, but I had a whole different thing with detectives and the whole... And you
I
gutted it.
Yeah. I made it more character.
We, quote unquote, co-wrote it.
Yeah.
But it's your movie. It's 100% your movie.
I just made it more character driven, more focused on them, and then have them take over. So it turned out to be like Clint just so happens to get entangled into this cult, and just bad shit just happens from there on out.
How do they get out of it? How do they stop it? Because basically the cult wants to create these human sacrifices to enable this sort of supernatural power.
Yeah.
We don't want to give too much away, but that's the general gist of it. We'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
So
it has to do with you have to suspend some disbelief. I mean, crazy shit happens all the time, so this is not really new to the world of cults. It's pretty tame.
I mean, just watch a documentary about Marilyn Manson and what they did to that was deeply violent.
Mine is nothing compared to actual.
And this is not really outside the realm of possibility. There's violence, but I mean, it all comes to a conclusion.
There's a reason for the violence.
Right. But I mean, cults have done, that's where the term, drink the Kool-Aid come from. Jim Jones.
Right.
They all drank the Kool-Aid.
Don't
drink the Kool-Aid. So.
They slurped it up.
We've done our cult research, people.
With a straw.
Yeah. So let's talk prep on the Devout. Where are you at? What are you doing to be prepping? Let's talk about the prepping.
Right now, we just did today the.
I feel like I'm a DJ. Prepping.
What was that?
Before we started this, we did the budget breakdown. We did the location breakdown. We did the character breakdown. Basically, schedule. Taking it piece by piece and just really getting into okay, so how much is this going to cost? What's this going to do? Setting up a schedule.
Because you're making this almost out of pocket, so to speak, where it's very micro budget. Mm-hmm. You're spending the least amount as possible. Talk about all the stuff that you're going to do personally.
I wrote it. I'm directing, producing. I'm the editor. I'm the cinematographer, and color editing. Sound, so editing that comes with editing, and then using Isotope to do the sound editing myself. That saves money long term.
So basically, you're bringing in a couple of PAs
Yeah.
to help with light and record sound.
Yep. And like students from UC who like can use it as credit and stuff like that. That
The
can,
PAs will be like film students or people
who are
just
hungry and
starting
passionate
out.
too,
Sure,
like,
yeah.
who want to learn, not
Right.
people who are just like, oh, I'm
Yeah.
here, whatever.
I
You
need,
wanna-
I need the credits. So,
It's a way for the idea behind it is that they're young and inexperienced. They're going to get experience on an actual feature film set, but at the same time, they help you by
And they're not just going to stand there like they would usually do on a bigger set. They're
Right.
actually going to be hands-on
Yeah.
because I need them to be hands-on.
setting up lights,
setting up
moving
lights.
the camera,
They're going to
recording
actually
sound. Yeah.
they're going to get a whole.
And they're
film
right
school.
there in there watching you work with the actors, run the camera.
It's going to be their
set
film
the
school.
scene, block the scene.
Mhm.
Like
And they're going to
that's
see
really
everything and watch
where
everything.
you learn.
Mhm.
If you unless you're
that's the perfect film school.
the best way to learn
Best
is
film
either
school to have.
best way to learn is either you're doing it yourself or you're right there in the midst of someone else doing it and you kind of pick up because they'll watch
They're
you
gonna
do
feel
it.
they're gonna feel the pain. They're gonna feel the stress because it's so intimate. Because I'm the main guy and I'm telling them what to do, and they're gonna feel that with
Right.
me, and they're gonna have now it's gonna be a really test. Are they really passionate about this or not?
But that's really your crew. It's the three of us because Nick will be doing the behind the scenes.
Yep. And really
I'm
behind the
helping- I'm
scenes, like I want
producing.
you to document everything, not like Troy Duffy, who let his friends come in and fucking made him look like an asshole.
Yeah.
But I don't yell on set, so
Nah, I'm not. I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not. You motherfucker!
You suck.
You're gonna have your David O. Russell moment.
Why
on
did
this
I
movie.
cast you? Yeah, we don't do any. We don't do any of that.
No.
Yeah, it'll basically be the three of us and a couple PAs. That's your
Yeah.
crew. Like that's it. And then you're gonna have a special effects makeup artist for 2
Oh,
or
yeah.
3 days, just
Yeah.
to do the blood effects. But that's it. Like really, the only people hiring is the special effects makeup artists.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's some gunfire stuff.
Oh, a composer.
in the finale that you need to hire a visual effects to do like the gunfire bullet hole effects, but those are relatively simple. And then your composer. That's literally the only 3 people you're literally going to hire
Now,
besides the PAs. So
having said that, I wouldn't be able I'm not saying this out of my ass like I'm gonna be the writer, director, and producer. I'm doing all this because it's because I've acquired this knowledge and experience making shorts and doing stuff like that. So I'm capable. I'm pretty confident in doing it myself. Therefore, I don't have to translate my ideas or anything to anybody else. I already know I'm capable of doing it. I just need PAs around me to help me set up stuff, and I just talk directly to the actors.
here's what I've admired about what you've done. So what Naim did is after the beginning of the year when we got past the really bad COVID surge, you went out and made 4 short films.
Yeah, you have been since you got back, you have been on nonstop.
On fire.
Yes.
Making 4. So
Yeah.
this just tells everybody who sits on a short film for a year, what are you doing?
And if you
Okay.
want to look
And
at
basically
them,
you know, they're good shorts too. That's the other thing. And you shot them yourself, you recorded the sound yourself, you brought in someone to help a little bit with some sound editing and some music. That was really it. Right?
until I got the software to do the sound editing myself.
Until you did until you got the software. But the idea is that you made these short films that are they're all less than 10 minutes, right?
All less than 10 minutes.
All less than 10
and
minutes.
I make them for zero money. All my shorts.
No
zero.
money.
No money.
Actors you already know,
I do all
locations
those
you have
myself.
access to,
Mhm.
minimal lighting,
Mhm.
but they look fantastic. You know what I mean? And they're all sort of a different genre too. That's the other thing that I liked about it. But the whole idea was you wanted to practice
Mhm.
to get better at shooting and directing at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Seeing
So-
if I still have my visual style down, which stray cat, and then getting the performance out of the actors in the second one, and then the third one just for shits and gigs, just to have it on a tripod and then do handheld, and it kind of it works.
And it preps you for doing your feature.
Mhm.
So all those people out there who make excuses.
And plus DPing other projects
Well, yeah, you also DP someone else's short.
I DP 2 things
2, I forgot about that one.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's right.
So
That's
it's
the one we
like-
haven't
yeah.
seen yet. That's right. That's right.
So it's I came back and I was just doing stuff. It's just people, like we've discussed before, you got to finish stuff in order to practice and move
Right.
forward and learn.
I just had this conversation with someone, this young kid who was reaching out on one of the local filmmaking groups. And I said, hey man, I'm happy to give some advice. We had an hour phone call and he was just talking about what he was doing. And I said, well, here's my advice. I give the same advice to everybody. And I said, I think you're going about a few things wrong. I said, it's just my opinion, but this is also based off of 20 years of experience. And I basically said, I was like, you're young, you have more than enough time. You're basically making short films with friends. Keep doing that but here's what you need to get down. He wasn't fully writing his script. He wasn't fully scheduling. he was like, well, we shot a scene in January and now I want to redo it. I was like, well, that's your first mistake.
Yeah.
You need to, first of all, get your script down, keep it under 10 pages. He was writing it in, a Word or something. I'm like, no, there's free screenwriting softwares. Right. Like, these were the things I was telling him to kind of get started. But you got to go out and do these things, because if you want to up your game to a point where you're at, where you're getting ready to do a feature and you're hiring real actors. No, they're not Hollywood stars, but they're real actors. These are people who've gone to school for this, studied it, like know what they're doing. And they're also trying to make a career out of it. So you're working together to achieve the same thing. But to get from the point where you're casting friends and family to the point where you're casting real actors, you need to be, number one, experienced, but you also got to be prepared. Mm-hmm. You need to know how to write your script and make it look professional. You know how to break down your script into a shooting schedule and all the breakdowns you need to do, from props to locations to all this stuff, and practice doing that in a realm where you can screw it up, basically, which you can screw it up with friends and family because they're going to forgive you. But if you go try to cast real actors, even if you're not paying them, even if they're college students who are trying to make this their career, and you're not prepared and you're not scheduled really, really thoroughly, you're going to piss off a lot of actors.
It's just going to
So what's that going to do? Then those actors are going to go tell people about you, hey, don't work on this guy's film. He doesn't know what he's doing.
Yep.
You'll never come back from that on a reputation level. It's so hard to come back from that. But if you're in your early 20s and you know what you're doing, what you want, everything's scheduled, everything's efficient, and actors come on your set, they're like, damn, this dude knows, or this girl knows what's going on. Mm-hmm. That's huge. So that was my advice. I was like, get that part down. All the creativity will come if you're a creative person.
Yeah.
But if you don't have those things in order, you're screwed. And I think that's what you doing these little short films has done, is really prepared you.
For sure, yeah.
I agree. That was my plan when I was in quarantine. I was like, I'm going to come back, and I plan on making at least 4 short films. I made 4. I made 5. So
made 4 or 5 yourself, then helped on
plus a few of the DP, like we were mentioning.
So it was like, okay, now I can stop. All right, I may have one more I want to make just because I love that one.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to be focused on Guilt and Devout because...
Right. Yeah, so Naim's helping produce Guilt. He's helped with locations and actors, and so's Nick. He's helped produce. Nick's going to do the behind the scenes on Guilt, which we've already done a few pre-production days, like shot list meeting and location scouting and those kind of things. We're doing a really good test shoot tomorrow to sort of practice with the new camera. We got a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 4K, the longest description of camera, and it's not red.
No,
it's Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 4K.
But it's just gonna elevate.
Yeah.
It's just gonna make it look more cinematic.
Right.
Which is like our DSLRs, we have the eye, we just need the equipment.
DSLRs are good
starting
early
out.
on.
Yeah.
I had upgraded from that, where I had a Sony FS5, which was a solid camera. It shot in 4K, but I only shot it in 1080p because at that time I did not have the editing system to handle 4K. I do now. But I was like, it always looked kind of more fit for documentaries to me. Like, it's a good camera.
And I use it on my shorts.
Yeah.
Like DSLRs, the Canon.
Mm-hmm. They're great for shorts and, when you're learning how to...
Made a feature on it.
That's right. You shot Darkest Edge on that. What you got?
No, we shot Ride or Die on that.
You shot Ride or Die on that? Okay. What did you shoot Darkest Edge on? I forget.
Sony A7
The Sony,
II.
okay. Mm-hmm. So I shot 2 features on my Sony. You shot a feature on a Sony. They're good cameras. Mm-hmm. Blackmagic just has a film... cinematic look.
It's made for cinema. It's
very much, yeah. And it's like, you can get that with your lenses for less than $2,000, man. Mm-hmm. It's beautiful.
And you can do it within your budget too.
Yeah, don't go buy it if you're still learning and trying to learn how to make shorts. Like, use your freaking phone if you need to do that. But
my last film, I shot it on my fucking iPhone.
Yeah, Soderbergh. He's done 2 movies on an iPhone. Like, give me a break. If he does it, anybody can do it. So, but it goes back to, I gotta say it, Robert Rodriguez.
I was gonna say.
Here it comes. If you can be technical and creative, you can be unstoppable.
Exactly.
I love it. So, and that's kind of what I'm doing on Guilt, where I'm taking a similar approach. Even though I have a small budget, I'm still gonna run camera myself. Even though I brought on a DP, I brought on Ben Rigney, who DP'd Darkest Edge, but he's really gonna help with some of the lighting because the looks, the supernatural scenes, and then the reality scenes are gonna have a different look. So I wanted someone who was he's really good at lighting. So I really wanted him for that. But I like running my own camera because it just allows me to move through the shots faster. I like being in there with the actors, that kind of stuff. But I'm going to be editing and color grading and now doing my own sound design.
Yeah.
So what we kind of came to the conclusion, back me up on this, is when you're making movies for basically no budget to micro budget or in that realm, the only way to get people to be as passionate about your projects as you are is either one, you have a similar goal. So actors obviously are trying to showcase their skills, so they're going to be passionate about what they're doing. Or you pay someone a shitload of money. Yeah. Like that's the two ways to get people, right? Well, we can't pay people a shitload of money. So even if you pay someone a decent amount of money for what would be a decent amount of money for a micro budget, it's still only so much money. They can only dedicate so much time. And I totally respect that. This is not a knock on anybody who's doing that. You only have so much time you can dedicate. So if you can do, as a filmmaker, making your own movie, if you can do it yourself, you're going to spend more time. You're going to pay more attention to the little details. And that's why I love how you've done your short films.
Yeah, and you know what you want. You don't have to and it's good learning for you. But now, I was doing a Q&A the other day at UC for an intro to filmmaking class.
Okay.
One of the students was like, what if I don't like to hold the camera? And I was like, well, if you make a short and you really, really don't like holding the camera, just find a collaborator. Collaborate with them. And then through them, you can find more collaborators. And it's like a whole networking thing.
Right.
So it just goes back to just network. Find somebody who likes to hold the camera and wants to just hold the camera for you.
I was like that early on. I didn't want to, and I was a camera guy. And like when I worked in video production when I was younger, I was a camera guy, but it was more like studio style camera work. So then when I was in the field, I was like, oh, I'm freaking out, right? So it was a fear thing. It was totally insecurity on my part. I eventually got past that. And I still have that from time to time. But I've been editing this whole time, so my confidence in my editing is completely different. So that's good advice to that person, though.
And I would say collaborate and communicate. Be a good communicator to the people around you who, if you can't do a job, if you can't edit, and if you don't want to edit, if you don't want to do any of these jobs, really don't, you just want to stick to writing, directing, be a good communicator and communicate your vision.
But I do recommend to at least
try it.
Do it a couple of times yourself. Run the camera, edit, do those things yourself, because number one, you'll find out if you like it or not. And it's okay if you don't. Not everybody wants to do all these things. But if you've gone through it, I would even tell directors, go act.
I've acted in my own stuff.
Yeah. Do a little bit of acting just so you can see what it's like. Because once you walk through someone's shoes, that old saying, and you know what they're dealing with, it's so much easier to be empathetic and relate and communicate when you do direct someone who's running camera, acting, editing, whatever it is. So that's why it's beneficial on your little short films to do as much as you can to figure that out. So that's kind of
practice. Like it's like you practice anything else. Like that's why I make so much, is because it's not about ego. It's not about quality versus quantity or whatever, quantity versus quality or whatever. It's just finding my voice, finding my style, and practicing. That's what you're supposed to do.
Right.
And I just happen to do it in public, just posting it.
Right.
And I don't want to keep it in a folder. I want to release it. I want to get opinions. I want to get feedback.
But you also have confidence in yourself as a filmmaker. You know you're a good storyteller. You know you're a good filmmaker, and you have.
I know where my
confidence.
flaws are too.
Yeah, exactly.
I know what's not good, and I know what's good.
I've always said the difference between confidence and arrogance is confidence is knowing what you're good at and what you're not good at, and being able to recognize the difference. Arrogance is when you think you're good at everything.
Yeah.
Right.
That's my sort of way of separating it. You're confident. You're not arrogant. The other thing is you also don't have you don't have that wall of fear that stops
that's
you from
gone.
doing.
That's disappeared.
That's gone. Right.
That's
so many filmmakers are like, oh, feature. Like, dude, it's basically 10 short films. Like, it's not that big a deal. It's not the end of the world. Like, well, what if somebody doesn't like it? Then they don't like it.
For Darkest Edge, I'm pretty sure everybody doesn't like it.
And you know what? And you know what?
Sure comes.
And you know what?
It got distribution. It's on all the platforms.
And there are people who do like it.
And there's people who do like it. I always make fun of myself.
Yeah.
But
no, it's good.
But it's on all these platforms for a reason. And that gave me a little bit more confidence in that. Okay, if I go and do my next movie and I do like what I want and put it out there, I think it'll get the distro. It'll do well.
Right.
Because I got the confidence for the first time, and that movie was just like shot on a Sony 1080, no high tech equipment,
But you
no
were thrown
Hollywood.
into that situation. I mean, we've talked about that before.
Right.
It was a 5-man crew. Like,
Right.
it was very bare bones, and we still got distribution.
It's still a solid movie. But I go back to this, like, especially when you're making a genre film, whether it be thriller or supernatural, horror.
And this is a mystery drama type fucking movie. This ain't any.
This isn't a full blown thriller. It's not a full blown horror. It's
right.
More,
Yeah.
It's more in the gray area. It's not as black and white. But when I've made past supernatural thrillers, because I've made a couple before, I ask people, "Do you like supernatural thrillers?" Well, not really. I'm like, then don't even bother watching it. Because my thing is like, when I make a supernatural thriller, do you like those? Yes. Then I think you'll like it. If you don't like those, then I don't think you'll like it. That's how cut and dry it is. And that's why I'm about my thrillers. And I pretty much just make thrillers, different style of thrillers. But I'm like, if you're a fan of thrillers, check it out. If you're not, then don't.
This is gonna sound really fucking arrogant.
Oh, I just said this a minute ago.
But I make Naim David movies.
Yes,
I
you
make
do.
like Kevin Smith makes Kevin Smith movies.
Right.
Quentin Tarantino makes Quentin Tarantino movies. They make the movies they want.
Right.
And everybody else is like,
And you're
digging it.
yeah.
And everybody else digs it.
Right, but it's like that's the whole
Not
point.
everybody else, but like
When
certain-
You're gonna find an audience for like you're gonna find an audience.
There's gonna
for
be
your
an
films.
audience.
There's
That's
gonna
what we
be there's
need
gonna
more
be
of,
people
though.
who
You have
Yeah.
we were just talking about the Justin Benson, Aaron Moorhead directing team, and their movies are distinctively theirs. Or other filmmakers like you've talked about Kevin Smith and Rodriguez. And
so
those guys.
recent like the Safdie brothers. I put
Safdie
in the
was
category
very
too.
much like
Yeah.
they all have their own.
They have
Absolutely,
certain,
yeah.
some people love it, some people don't. There's nothing wrong with that.
Nolan.
That's whole movies.
Nolan.
Movies
Nolan,
are
Fincher.
Yeah.
And we name these filmmakers. It's because they all are different. They all have their
Right.
own voice. We're not naming generic filmmakers from like who.
Yeah. If you talk about like directors that have mainly made their name from Marvel movies or DC movies or whatever, it's not that they're bad, but they're in a machine.
They're working
that's
for
already
yes.
rolling, right? So there's not that distinct voice.
Peyton Reed, the Russo brothers, Sean Levy, like these filmmakers who I like. It's just they work for the machine. They're not
Right.
auteurs in a sense.
Yeah.
I'd say the only one like outside of like the only one who kind of works in that machine who does have his own voice is probably Taika Waititi.
Yes, now they
Yeah.
hired him specifically
Yeah,
because
yeah.
of that.
Yeah.
Now the Russo brothers, they went out and they did Cherry, so they're trying to do their own,
Sure.
show their more distinct voice. They did
It's
it.
not a knock on them. It's
No,
just-
No, this is
it's
not a
just-
knock
yeah,
on
yeah.
anybody. This is just the filmmaking world that we live in, right?
Yeah.
But you, like you said, you're trying to make movies. That's one of the reasons I'm with you. Like I love running my own camera because then I frame things the way I want. The angles, the movement, all those things the way that I want it.
All I have to.
It's not that it's bad to collaborate with a DP on that.
No.
But when you are so specific, you also have a lot of time. That time is precious on set, and the less you can spend on other things. So instead of sitting there so imagine it this way: you're on set. You have your shot list, like you're all planned out. I went through my shot list with Ben, but he's going to be more focused on lighting. If he was doing all the camera stuff too, and I was dependent on him to do it, there's this conversation that needs to happen on set with him. So that time has to be planned for, rather than I get on set, I have my actors run their lines and get kind of as their warm up. I'm setting up camera, he's setting up lighting. That all is happening simultaneously. We get that done in 15, 20 minutes. I block the scene out with the actors, discuss the scene a little bit, and within 30 minutes, we're shooting the scene. Rather than spending an hour, so I save myself so much time. And you're like, well, it's only 30 minutes. Maybe it takes you an hour to get ready, right? I've seen it on set. The more crew that you have, the more people you have asking you questions, the more people who need your direction, the more time that takes. So that's the benefit of what we're doing, where you're shooting yourself or I'm running my own camera, is that you cut out the middleman and you jump in and you do it.
And I'm going to add on to that. There's two things. One thing is, when you're working with little money, you don't have much time to fucking fuck around.
Right.
You got to get to it.
Fucking around.
And so it's like, instead of like wasting time talking to somebody, I can just do it myself, and then that eliminates time, and I can focus more on the actors.
Give them
and
more
me-
takes.
And then give them more takes, and then focus on my camera movements with the
Yeah.
actors.
So if you get in there and your camera movement wasn't good, you do another take. You have
Exactly.
time for that now.
And it's a
right?
small crew, and we can able to move fast
Right.
on these sets to different locations because of the minimal crew.
Right.
Like for
Leaner means faster.
yeah,
Is the idea.
and not faster means you're not going to get good material. That doesn't like
It's efficient. Yeah.
efficiency.
There's fast and there's rushed.
Yes, we're not rushing. We're being fast. We're being efficient, and we're getting the stuff that we need.
Right.
And it's not bad. If you're a bad filmmaker, you're a bad filmmaker. That's a whole other thing. But if you're properly prepped, that's a whole different other story too.
Right.
There was an interview with the director on the podcast, Indie Film Hustle podcast, and the director was talking about how he works with actors, and he's like, he's like, I don't believe in rehearsals for the whole movie for like 4 weeks and 5 weeks. He's like, I do it for a week or maybe like a couple days. I think it's like a couple days or to a week where he's just like talking with the actors. They're not going over specific like scenes or whatever. They're just going over the material and stuff, and then rehearsing some lines. And then through that, all the questions they would have on set are answered in rehearsal. So when they're on set, they already know what's going on, and we can just go with it because they already discussed it.
I like
That's
that.
the point of rehearsal,
right? And I do something similar. I come from the acting world, and I hated rehearsal. You know what I mean? Now that doesn't necessarily mean prepping, but like if you do a play, you rehearse for weeks.
Yeah.
And it gets to the point where it just becomes dull. And then you go to do the show. Now you get a bit of an energy shot because you have a live audience there, right? So that sort of invigorates you again. But you have this period where you start off on a high as you're like excited about this play and you're excited about this role. And then you keep rehearsing and that energy just keeps going down and down and down and down and down. Because you just get tired. There's nothing new.
There's nothing new to
I've got this down. Can we just do this already? Then the play comes and all of a sudden the energy shoots back up because now you're doing it from an audience, right? To where a movie set, because you're shooting it out of order anyway, you want to sort of individually focus on scenes that are, because they're broken up. So, I'm focusing on this scene. Well, here's what happened before. Here's what happens after. So the prep is more about casting the right actor, sitting down and talking to the actor and having just good conversation. Let's get on the same page. Let's make sure we want the same things from the character. That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then you start to talk about like, well, here's my process of directing and here's their process of acting, because every actor is different. And once you know sort of how an actor likes to go about it, you can sort of adapt your schedule, your style to them. Do they need 10 minutes to go off on their own and kind of get into the emotions, or do they just want to get in and go? Or I always need a couple takes to kind of get going, right? Okay. So my last film, I knew I had a certain actor who I won't name, but who needed a couple of takes to kind of get into the rhythm. So I would always shoot, if I'm doing a dialogue scene, I would always shoot the other actor first, who I knew was kind of ready to go from the beginning. So by the time I switched and was shooting his shot, he was ready to go.
I did a similar thing on my movie too.
So you sort of learn some of those things you won't learn until you get on set.
There's a lot of things you don't know until you work on a fucking movie.
Yes.
And when you work on a movie, then you can start bitching and complaining about bullshit. But if you haven't worked on shit,
You can't bitch and
you
complain
can't
if
bitch
you
about
haven't done
complaining if
anything
you haven't
yet.
done anything.
Right.
You know,
You know,
you can
yeah.
only get your movie made. You can only get your
And
movie
look,
made.
there's aspects of making the movie. So the whole point of this podcast was to talk about prep. But when I'm prepping a movie, I hate the scheduling process.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
I try. So
You did my scheduling.
I did. I like the breakdown of the script.
But then again, you're a producer. It's your motherfucking job. But I'm a producer, so it's my
Just slow
motherfucking
down.
job.
Don't make me pause this podcast.
We will pause this right
I will
now.
pause this and we'll be back in just
Right now.
Yeah, but I enjoy the breakdowns of the script because I see the script in a very different way. Like we were talking about this for The Devout, like the villain character Cain. It didn't hit me until I did the breakdowns that he's always in one specific location through the whole movie.
He's felt throughout the script.
But he's felt through the whole movie.
Yeah.
And you don't realize it until you go, oh shit, he's always at this one location. Which was just unique.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it until I did the breakdown.
doesn't
When you
go
do the
anywhere.
breakdown, you look at each scene very, very individual, separate from the script, and you go, oh, it's at this location, it's at this time of day, it has this props, it has this many characters. Like you really break it down. So I like that process because it allows me to see the movie in a different light, which helps me. And then I do the same thing when I shot list my movie, because I shot list my movie in depth. And so I'm going through literally line by line of the movie to really get down how I want that to look, what angle, what framing, what movement. And I write all that into my shot lists so that I also remind myself. It also tells me like, what coverage do I want? Do I want this wide shot through the whole scene or just the very beginning? So that's going to save me time. Do I need to do this wide shot for all 3 pages of the scene, or do I just need to do it for the first half of the first page? So that prepares me before I ever go on set, I know exactly I need these 8 shots, but these 4 cover the whole scene. These 4 are only covering these pieces. I'm fully prepared when I get on set.
That's
and
my
that
next
makes
thing
the
I'm gonna
shooting efficient. So when you're doing all this prep stuff, which, don't get me wrong, is kind of boring, but is needed.
Prop list.
You need to
All that stuff is done. But where the scheduling gets frustrating is when you send it to people and they're like, oh, I'm not available this day. So then you got to move that day around.
You gotta work with actors.
One of the things I started doing a few years back on my schedules is I try to put an estimated time. We were talking about this earlier today in our production meeting. Is I try to put an estimated time, like, okay, this character is going to be on set from 6 p.m. to midnight, and this character from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. And I try to give them an estimate so they know, oh, I'm only going to be on set for half the day. And it never fails. I get a question, hey, what time are we going to be on set?
Look at the call sheet.
Look
at the schedule.
at the schedule.
Yeah.
Get out your phone, you've got it on there.
Yeah. You know, and then, well, how are we going to know where we're going to be?
Call sheet.
There's a call sheet that I emailed and said the week before shooting, I will send out call sheets with the address and the set. Like, you still inevitably get those questions. And, like, that's the part of, like, scheduling around people's lives. And it's nobody's fault, don't get me wrong. It's just frustrating because you're making a micro-budget movie. When you're making a $100 million movie, those fucking people are there when you tell them to be there because you're paying them a lot of money.
Yeah.
When you're making a movie for whatever change you can dig out of your couch, you know, oh, you can only be there on Friday, then I'll schedule it on Friday.
Yeah. We're gonna make this work.
Yeah, we're gonna make this work.
You know what's funny that I thought of when you were talking about Naim, when you were talking about how you did that Q&A at UC, and one of the students asked if they didn't like holding the camera. It reminded me of this interview with Quentin Tarantino that I saw. I can't remember where he was interviewed, but he was talking about how he met Terry Gilliam.
Charlie Rose.
Was it Charlie Rose?
He was on Charlie Rose.
Okay.
And he was talking about it.
Right, and he's talking about how...
This is fantastic. Go ahead. I'm eagerly waiting.
He's like the encyclopedia of Tarantino. He knows, like...
Robert Rodriguez was on Charlie Rose as well. So.
But,
yes, he was.
But anyway, he's talking about how he was being interviewed by Charlie... He was on Charlie Rose, and he was meeting with Terry Gilliam, and he was saying, like, well, like... You have a like specific vision for your movies. Like, how do you do that? And Terry Gilliam was like, "Look, you don't have to know how to do like all this shit. You just have to explain to people what you want.
Yeah.
If you can do that, then you're good to go. Like, you don't know how to mess with lights. You don't know how to make costumes and all that. Like, you just explain to people what you want, and like, you'll be all fine."
That's true. Like, I was talking to my composer for Guilt, and we were just talking the other day, and I said, hey, here's kind of the process that I want to go through. This will work for you. And I basically said, my goal is to have the movie edited together by September, because the weekends we're shooting are every other weekend. Just is kind of how I have to do it with my life. So I edit in between, right? So I'm sort of doing post-production as we're shooting, which I love to do. So that allows me to sort of speed up the editing process a little bit. Rather than shoot 2 months, edit for 2 months, I'm sort of doing both simultaneously, and it ends up taking a total of 3 months, right? He's like, oh, no, that's cool. So I was like, I'll send you the movie, edited, color graded, credits, but no sound design or anything will be done. Just obviously the dialogue's in there. Watch it, then we'll meet, and then we're going to talk through the movie in depth. Like, I'm going to say, like, here's where I want music from this point to this point. Here's what I want the music to feel like. And I told him, I was like, I am not a musician. Like, I did chorus in high school. That's as close to anything musical that I've ever gotten.
Just have an a cappella score.
Yeah. And I was like, so, I know what baritone and tenor is. Like, I'm not going to tell you, hey, can you use this note? That's not going to be. So what I try to direct from is more of this is how I want the audience to feel here. I want them to feel eeriness or uneasy or claustrophobic or whatever feeling I want them to get. He's like, no, that's perfect. Because then I know exactly what I want the music to feel like. And I was like, there we go. So I just talked to him up front and said it up front. Look, I'm not a musician, so this is how I've always directed composers. Does this work for you? And he's like, that's perfect. So they'll tell you, be specific with me. Do you want music from this point to this point? Do you want me to figure it out? And I'm like, no, I'm a weird control freak. So yeah, I want music from this point to this point. I'm going to want it to like increase here and be more intense there, and I'm gonna have all that figured out. I said, but I tend to figure out the music once I edit. I have an idea of what I want the music to be at the script phase, but I don't know for sure until I edit. Because then as I'm editing, some of the editing is really much driven by character the actor's performance, and I find some rhythm that way when I'm editing. and then the music sort of ties into that. So that's how I like to do it. But that's my own personal approach, and I've developed that over directing 6 features and numerous shorts and commercials and all this stuff. So the more stuff you do, the more you sort of find your own style. You know, I like certain types of camera work, and I like to frame my close-ups in the, you know, the rule of thirds, and I don't like to center them up, and just little stuff like that you sort of figure out that start to create your own style, and you'll see a connection to all that person's work. You know, you have a certain way you like to shoot, and all your shorts have elements that are the same because it's you. And that's what makes filmmaking great, right? So when you're prepping your movie, you should be thinking of these things, and it's okay to do that. If you have to ask yourself, is it okay to do this? Yes. Just yes.
That's I think that's a big mistake.
Yeah.
So is it okay if I can do this? Just do it.
Just
And
do
if
it.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work. You learn.
Change it next time.
Change it next time.
Which is the benefit of, for those that are starting out,
You're gonna learn
doing
from
a
your
bunch of short
mistakes
films
from
like you
yeah.
did. Like you just, like we know filmmakers who've literally spent a year to 2 years on one 10-minute short.
I did the same thing one time.
I've done it too.
I spent
Yeah.
2 years on the thing.
Yeah.
Editing back and forth, really gutting it and making it like it was shit at the
I
end.
spent 3 years on a feature. That's fucking stupid. Like from shoot to finish, if you do the short films and you prepare yourself.
And we're talking at this level. We're talking at about a micro budget level. We're talking about a level where we're not talking Hollywood. We're not talking. This is for the micro budget filmmaker.
Right.
This is for people who are not, you know, we're not talking about rich people here. We're talking about people who have a few $1,000s to spend, whatever the fuck, and making a movie. And this is how you can really save money making a movie and actually make it well. Because people, when, you know, we're talking about this and they're like, well, I don't have much money, it's not going to look good. That's not true.
Not nowadays.
That's not true at all.
Look, you have a better camera in your pocket walking around right now than I had starting out.
All you have to do is just have an eye. Have the talent. Talent helps.
Take your phone and just change the angle. Shoot it low and off to the side. Frame your actors or your people in one side of the frame, leaving the other side open. Immediately, you change what it looks like. You know, shoot it with the sun behind you rather than, or behind your characters rather than behind you.
Or in the side. Have some nice side lighting.
Or and just see how that changes the look of what you're doing. Like just doing those little things makes you a filmmaker.
It's called practice.
Right. So you got to have that. So as we're prepping these movies, we're doing all the tedious stuff that, let's just be honest, it's not the most fun stuff to do.
No.
You know what I mean? So like on Guilt, we've done a shotless meeting where we all sit around my dining room table
And talk about.
and I
Just
talked
talk
about this
the
close
filter, the
up
scripts.
from Elizabeth's point of view. And I need this shot to cover the whole fucking scene. Right? I'm being sarcastic, but that's literally kind of like, at a certain point, I'm like, do I really need to like do that? And Ben's like, no, I think I got it. Like, you know. So we kind of jumped to the bigger shots where I had a lot more movement, or there was a lot more happening where I wanted something to walk in and walk out. Like I do a lot of different things with the camera movement in this movie that are a little different. You know what I mean? Very staged and cinematic and, you know, all those things. And so you got to talk those things through. So it's just part of the process, like going through the locations and figuring out, okay, this scene's a day scene or this scene's a night scene. Do we want to use available light that comes through the windows during the day? Do we want to use the light from the chandelier that's in the dining room? Are we going to need to put lights outside on the porch and blast them through the window? Like you figure all those things out, especially when you're doing a feature. You know, if you're shooting a short film and you're just doing available light, you can just go. It's just, you know, then it's more about angles and framing. And in my opinion, framing is just as important as lighting.
I mean, watch, if you guys want examples, like watch Stray Cat, like my film, like it is like made with like
On YouTube.
one light,
Right.
and everything else is available light.
Yeah.
I used different angles. I did all the editing myself. Except
But this is
for
about how
the-
you stage it. Like you can put an actor in front of a window and get a very different vibe. You know, let it be silhouetted or something, and that immediately gives a different vibe. You know what I mean? Like I went to a hardware store and bought 2 clamp lights that basically are round and have a little clamp that can clamp onto a table or a pole or whatever. And you can pop a white LED light in there that's a 40, 60 watt. And I have 2 of those. I can light all kinds of stuff with just that and plug into a normal outlet. So you don't need to worry about hurting anybody's electric or needing a generator for extra power. And then I bought these 2 LED light sticks that you charge up, and they just go for like 12 hours, and they put out this beautiful white clean light. And I have 2 of them. I think I spent $50. So for less than $100, I bought 4 lights. I don't need these big man pajamas.
No.
You know what I mean? Will there be scenes that I need that? Probably. But you don't need that when you're starting out.
No.
You don't need that in your first feature. You know what I mean? But the prep that we're doing right now, I mean, I started prepping this movie in January, and we don't start shooting till June. So I'm spending just as much time prepping it as I will be shooting and editing. Mm-hmm. And the goal is to have the movie done by Thanksgiving. That's my goal. So you figure we start shooting June, so we shoot June and July, and then September, October, November is post.
Yeah.
That's 5 months of shooting and editing.
And you're actually you have a set, you have goals, you have a schedule, you have things that you got to do in order to meet a deadline, your own deadlines, and that's how you get shit done. That's how you get movies made, and you move on to the next one.
Because I want it done so that I can immediately start sending it out to submit it to film festivals, send it to distributors, you know, so whatever we're going to do with it. I have multiple.
We have a plan A, B, and C, and D.
You know, so like I always say, if plan A doesn't work, there's 25 other letters in the alphabet. So you better have multiple plans.
There you go.
So we have different ideas of what we want to do with distribution, but which we'll talk about probably on an episode way down the road. But this is all about the prep and just learning, you know. And you got to do these things. You got to do the breakdowns.
We'll get more into it once we do the actual episode on Guilt.
Yes, and onto the Val.
And onto the Val.
And I've already got my next movie ready. Like we were making. So Nick just posted or shared pictures from Choice, which we were shooting just over a year ago.
Yeah.
We were shooting in February of 2020 before the freaking world ended.
It was literally, you know what, I was thinking about this. It was literally that last day that we were shooting. I think it was the next week whenever
the next week,
shut
March
down.
11th, I remember is when they sent me home from work. And
I think
that's when they shut down, you know, you couldn't get your freaking hair cut, man. It was so weird. And we were 3 days into Choice.
Well, we had one final, good
we had
fun
one fun
day.
day.
That was a good day.
But I took that script and I did a rewrite. And I changed the title to Punished.
Yes.
And I plan to shoot that next spring. Well, late winter, early spring. Basically, literally for no money. Like as bare bones as we can get it. I want to shoot it. It's a revenge thriller with action and conspiracy and shady characters and all the fun stuff I love about thrillers. And we're going to shoot it on the Blackmagic. So the benefit of this is that I didn't shoot it then when I still had my Sony, and now I have the Blackmagic, and I actually made the script better. Mm-hmm. And I think the title's better. So it just made it better. So I just took that time rather than trying to shoot stuff during a pandemic, which we considered doing. We just stopped, and then so now we have Guilt, and then Devout, and then Punished, and then you have another one, 2 more that you're writing.
Yeah, and I have already written the Murder Diaries I want to do, and then there's another one after that. So there's an endless amount. And
I have 3 scripts that I want to write when I'm done with Guilt.
Okay. 2
more supernatural thrillers and another sort of psychological thriller mystery.
Murder Diaries might be my next one. I can make that.
Yeah. It's another bare bones one you can make.
Mm-hmm.
So
animal locations.
So you just gotta keep doing it, man. We're gonna make
practice.
Keep at least 1 or 2 features a year.
That's the goal.
Or we are going to make 1 or 2 features a year, I should say.
And the whole point of this is to instill, you know, the idea that you can go out and do it, and you don't need to have this whole grand idea of traditionalism and fucking Hollywood.
Go watch, we always talk about guys like Robert Rodriguez and Kevin Smith and stuff. Watch more recent guys. Like, there's a movie out called Hosts. Mm-hmm. Really cool horror film.
Right.
One of the co-directors, his name is Richard Oakes. They're from England. Cool ass movie. Violent as fuck.
Cosmos,
also from England, funny enough. Then Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead, whose first movie I think they made for like $20,000. It's called Resolution. Mm-hmm. They've done 4 movies, and now their movie just hit Netflix, which it came out last year with Anthony Mackie and Jamie Dornan. So now they have 2 relatively big movie stars.
What about the guy who did Infamous?
Josh Caldwell. Yeah, he did Negative, which was the movie that inspired me to shoot the whole shoot myself and shoot with available light. And he did the movie Negative, which I highly recommend. If you like thrillers, if you not a thriller, it's a spy thriller. So if you don't like those kind of movies, then don't bother with it. But if you do, check it out. He made it for $100,000. He was basically his crew, and then he brought on a couple things for just a couple of scenes, and that was it. So, you know, his whole philosophy was keep the crew really small except for the scenes that you need to sort of crew up. So crew down and crew up. You don't not necessarily need to have all these people there every day.
Mm-hmm.
And that was what he did so well. And then now he made Infamous, which was like a $2 million budget.
But in between, he did more little projects,
Yeah.
like features.
Yeah, he practiced.
Mm-hmm.
He did a short film that he shot in Mexico and shot it like a documentary where he just ran around and
like
shot footage.
$4,000 or $7,000 or $6,000.
Yeah, for just a few $1,000. Like he did stuff like that but with Infamous, like he had a bigger crew, but he still ran his own camera and he still kept the same
feel
and approach that ties into his style. So he's another one. Like check these guys out and see. Don't look at where they are now. If you like their current work, like you go on Netflix and you watch Synchronic and you like it, go watch their very first film, Resolution, which I think is on Tubi for free. And you can see where they started, and then you see all their films in between. You see how they develop.
Study the greats, study the filmmakers, study what's
Yep.
going on out there, and
Yep.
keep up to date. That's what you got to do.
But all that stuff will teach you that stuff. But the prepping that we're doing now, you have to do it to get better at it.
Yeah.
And so those filmmakers out there that are just like shooting from the hip, stop doing that. It does not make you more creative. Being prepared and breaking everything down
Makes
into
you more
smaller
creative.
pieces actually makes you more creative. I totally agree, because you see things differently,
Mm-hmm.
and it makes you go, "Oh, I want to shoot it like this instead of like this."
Because you're not thinking about you're not thinking too much about it. There's always
Yeah.
prep for you, and you're there. And you're
If you don't have your whole script down, you don't know what your story really is. And if you don't break your script down into pieces, then you've not seen it in the individual pieces, because you make movies with individual pieces. You don't make a movie as one big moving target. You make it as individual little tiny pieces, like a puzzle. So you need to create all the pieces, then you put them together.
Mm-hmm.
So think about it like that versus, because I've talked to people when I have a friend who wrote a script, and I was like, I read it and I was like, okay, there's a cool concept, but your script's like, it's all over the place. So I was like, did you outline this? No, man. Dude, I don't want to outline, man. Like, it disturbs my creativity. He does not talk like this.
I was going to say, is that your like...
I'm totally doing this to be a smartass, but I was like, okay, that's called a cop-out.
Yeah.
And an excuse for not being prepared. That's what that's called. And that stuff drives me nuts, because you have to be prepared. You need to outline. You need to break down the script. You need to do all those things, or you're going to be all over the place. And then think about it from the other perspective. If you're an actor or a crew person working on your project, and the person who's supposed to be, quote unquote, leading the project doesn't know what the fuck they're doing, you're done. You're out. You don't want to be a part of that.
No.
Because it's just a mess and it's not going anywhere. So think about how the other people are receiving your direction, and the more organized and the more you know every little detail of your movie, every time someone asks a question, you're going to have an answer, because you've broke that thing down. And that's what the phase we're in right now. So that when we get to set, we know every little piece of it.
Exactly.
And if we don't, we can say, you know what, I'm not really sure about this. What do you think?
Yeah,
And then you can have the collaboration with your actors.
And
or
that's
whoever.
always fine. It's okay to not know certain things. That's what collaboration, like you just said, happens.
Now, I will say something that I love about doing Guilt that's different than on the last two movies. So the last two movies I pretty much produced on my own. We've talked about Syndicate and Confined and stuff. What I'm looking forward to on this is, because I do like to edit in sequences, I can send a sequence to you guys, since it is my movie and I've written it and directed it and shot it and edited and done all these things. I can send it to you guys as my producers, who can then give me the feedback and be like, I don't really feel it, or it's a little too slow, or it's way too fast. You need to slow it down in this section. Like, I can get that kind of feedback and be like, oh, so I have people who I trust who can give me another pair of eyes. That's super. And I can do the same thing for you on Devout. And Nick can do the same thing for you on Devout.
That's exactly what
And that gives us some support. So it makes me even more willing to do a lot of these things myself, because it will be more efficient, but then I still have that other creative eye to look at it. Versus you're a director who works with a DP, who works with an editor, who's going to give you that feedback.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really important part.
I do too.
So
Absolutely. Is that all we wanted to cover without getting too deep into...
I think we've preached enough.
We'll get in depth later when we start,
Yes, we'll get in depth once we finish these movies. And
Yeah, nobody
We'll
can
get
see
more
these
into it,
movies
yeah.
right now, so it's kind of like we can't say, hey, go check this out.
this was more about, like, just for those, like...
It's
what
a
we always
motivational
consider-
episode.
Yeah.
How about that? Alex Ferrari can do a motivational episode underneath.
There we
from
go,
us,
yeah.
This is our version of it.
We do
just do a
these
little different.
we do these motivational episodes, or if it's something like the last one we did with Alex, where we're just talking, about
Talking movies.
All right, so thank you all so much for joining us for another edition of Step by Step, the Micro Budget Filmmaker. We'll see you next time.